everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. As I said in my description today, I am going to be by myself. I just got back from managing an event, and what just happened? And actually a couple of events, so I want to just kind of talk through some things. I just messed up my Instagram, but that's okay. The topic of today is gluten-free or not, why transparency in event catering matters. And I think this has been a topic for the last couple of weeks with a couple of my guests. And what was it? I had the conversation based on a Facebook post about somebody saying that a convention center would not feed her guests who have celiac disease. And she was looking for locations of where to buy food for her celiac guests in that specific city. And so I want to relate a different scenario of an event that I recently managed the food and beverage for that conference. It was 1,200 people, and it was just flabbergasting to me, actually. We had a meeting with the chef, which took about 5 to 6 weeks to get scheduled. But that chef, we were talking about one of our events, and we were going to have a lot of jambalaya and gumbo and shrimp and grits and some other locally themed food and beverage for that event. And he mentioned that the rice that he uses is not gluten-free. And majority of those dishes, two of those dishes contained rice, and another one contained wheat, and then we had the shrimp and grits. And I wanted to make sure that we had more than just the shrimp and grits and the little pies available for our attendees to make sure that they were gluten-free, because we had quite a few people with gluten-free that requested gluten-free. And so on that conference call with him and our event manager, he said, yeah, I can use a different rice. And he actually named that he uses Uncle Ben's rice, and it is not gluten-free. They put gluten in their rice. But he said he would use a different rice that did not contain gluten for our jambalaya and gumbo and things. So come to the event, and the night of, he tells me that the labels need to be redone because they all say that they're gluten-free, and they're actually not gluten-free. That the Uncle Ben's rice that he used contains gluten. And I'm like, so they wouldn't change. And he proceeds to say that, hey, but Uncle Ben's, we'll just change the label so that it says it's Uncle Ben's rice. And people who can eat Uncle Ben's rice will eat it, and they can know that they eat it safely, even if they have a gluten issue. This is like 10 minutes before this event is opening, and they've had the labels. They've known this for weeks, and they're running back and changing the labels. And so I said, well, we have now nothing gluten-free to serve our guests. Well, we had the shrimp and grits, which was going to be in the latter part of this event. And he's like, and I said, so that means I can't have actually anything to eat either. And he's like, well, we won't kill the meeting planner. We'll make sure that you've got something to eat. As much as I can't even speak right now, that was my response that night as well. And he did proceed to go back and have his team make some items that were without the Uncle Ben's rice to make sure that they were gluten-free, and so that we had options. But then again, I then had to go back and reach out to all of the people that were gluten-free and let them know this. Again, this is 10 minutes before this event is opening. So, and then just before I came online, I realized as well that I was in the restaurant of this hotel a couple of days earlier trying to eat lunch. And nothing on the restaurant buffet was labeled for allergens, or even if it was gluten-free or vegan or vegetarian. And I was clearly frustrated, and somebody tried to help me. And restaurant chef came out, and she's telling me, talking to me about the different things that were gluten-free that were available. And I said, I was talking about the gumbo, and she's like, well, no, that's got gluten in it. And I said, what makes it glutinous? And she was saying it's flour. And I'm like, well, can you change that flour, to be a gluten-free flour? And her response was, well, we can't change the the authenticity of the dish from where we are. That would be going against the recipe and the authenticity of it, which I am all about. But at the same time, we need to be labeling it, and we need to make sure that we have some options for people. But I want to go back to the catering menu one. This is, when we've talked about it, the CSM was on that call with us, heard that conversation. I talked to her about it after the fact, and she and her other CSMs and even the sales team were blown away, because they actually sell the fact that, and they've all been telling people that all of their gumbo and their jambalaya is gluten-free. And they have been for years, and that's how they sell it. They were not told by the chef that had changed. He did say that he had gone back to using Uncle Ben's rice, which contains gluten. Now, when I came back from this event, I then proceeded to call Uncle Ben's, and I asked via email, and I asked in several different questions, like, hey, which of your rice, does your rice contain gluten? And they replied back, some of our rices contain gluten, and it's ones that have spices in them. And I was Googling it. I was trying to look on Cisco and US Foods websites. I was looking on Amazon, but I was trying to find the food service version of it to maybe the food service one does have gluten added to it for whatever reason. And I only found one, and that was one that had additional spices added to it. So it was a flavored rice, like a dirty rice or, something like that. And Uncle Ben's reached out to me 3 or 4 times, which I appreciate them doing that, replied back to me on emails. And they actually gave me the link to their food service ordering options of their different products. And the only rice that contains gluten in it is ones that have additional spices in it. Their whole grain white rice, or I'm going to make sure I say it the right way. Their Ben's original long grain white original enriched parboiled rice. And that's what the chef kept telling me, that it's the parboiled rice that he buys, does not contain gluten. And neither does their brown rice that's parboiled and such. So I need to send this back to him and ask him which one he actually purchases, because I don't understand where the gluten is coming from in the rice that he's providing, that he is using. And actually, it reminds me of an event I attended in Chicago years ago, and they also said that their rice contained gluten. So I don't know where people are, because rice does not contain gluten naturally. Gluten is found in wheat, rye, and barley. So this just comes back to the entire aspect of transparency and labeling in our food and beverage at events. It is a challenge. And I actually posted a label this morning on something, and it said, I don't even remember what it was. It was Faro risotto, because we had a risotto station at one, and it said Faro risotto, and I'm like, contains wheat. And then at the bottom of it, they had gluten-free. And I'm going to say I missed catching that in the editing, because I do try to edit every single one of the labels that our hotels put out. But the hotel didn't proof their own labels to note that that they had noted that it was gluten-free. Just again, showing that the front of the house staff is not clear on food and beverage. They're not the ones making the food. They're not the ones that have access to the ingredient labels of the food that's being served. The chefs are. So where is the breakdown in the labeling of food and beverage? There's the front of the house that's not required. The front of the house that does make the labels. They usually make the labels the morning of or the night before. And then there's the kitchen who makes the food. They don't often communicate. They don't often clarify things, or they're clarifying things at the last minute. Like I mentioned, chefs like, oh no, we need to change those labels 10 minutes before our event, right? Another example of that came from that exact event, and we were serving panna cotta as a dessert. And panna cotta includes gelatin. And if you know, and my friend Crystal, Chef Crystal, just sent me a link to this, what is gelatin made of? And this is from the Food Network website. And gelatin is made from collagen. are made with collagen. And collagen is based from animals. So it is not a vegetarian dish. Panna cotta will never be a vegetarian dish unless it is made with, made with agar-agar or a vegan dish, because it's also made with panna cotta includes eggs and milk in it. So the recipe, it will never be a vegan dish, but it will definitely, it cannot be claimed to be a vegetarian dish either because of the gelatin. And gelatin is, I'm going to read this description that I found online. This is actually from the FDA's website, collagen versus gelatin. And this is talking about the EU and the UK, but they define gelatin as a natural soluble protein, gelling or non-gelling, obtained by the partial hydrolysis of collagen produced from bones, hides, skins, tendons, and sinews of animals. Collagen is defined as the protein-based product derived from animal bones, hides, skins, and tendons manufactured in accordance with relevant requirements. So when we're thinking vegetarian, we're thinking eggs and milk. I don't think vegetarians are, typically a vegetarian is not eating items that are made from the bones and tendons and sinews and hides of animals. So we can't claim that panna cotta is even vegetarian. So again, this goes back to understanding and labeling properly. And before I came on, or actually last week, there was a notice from the Alpha Gals, 2 Alpha Gals on Instagram, that that today in the Energy Committee, Energy and Commerce Committee, there was going to be a hearing on the Alpha Gal Allergen Inclusion Act, which would require food manufacturers to disclose alpha-gal on labels of most packaged foods. It was on the agenda for the House Subcommittee of Health today on a hearing. It did get postponed or rescheduled. But alpha-gal, gelatin is one of the things that you'll have to label for if an item contains gelatin. And again, this is on manufactured products. It's not going to be on unpackaged products like at our buffets, but it would be listed as the 10th top allergen in the United States if this gets passed. So it's just going to the transparency and the transparency and the authenticity and the accuracy of the labels that we're putting out and we're putting on our buffets. There was a conversation last week actually it wasn't even a conversation. It was a letter that I wrote to the state of California. And actually this is another exciting thing that happened in the last couple of weeks too, is that the Addy bill, which is the bill in California, which is SB Senate Bill 68, called the Addy bill, just passed the Assembly Health Committee, which is saying that bill actually will be requiring all the top 9 allergens to be labeled on unpackaged food at restaurants and any kind of food service products. So not just on packaged food. California would become the first state that would require that labeling be on, it would be a law, not just in the food bill, in the food code, but it would be a law that's saying that the top 9 food allergens must be disclosed on restaurant menus, whether it's in a QR code or printed on the menu. So that just goes back to that clarification and the information that we need to provide our guests on that. And in my letter to them to say I support this bill, I said that our attendees at events don't have the ability when they're going to a conference, they don't have direct access to the chef or to even the servers at an event, at a convention center or at a hotel, don't have direct access like they do at a restaurant, right? So, and they also don't have direct access for ordering their own food. When you go to an event, we're relying on me as a meeting planner to place an order of food. And then that goes through the event manager at that hotel or that convention center. And then that goes to the chef and to the garde manger and to the pastry chef, et cetera. So requiring labeling on menu items is going to be huge in the state of California. And I think it's when that becomes law, I'm going to say when, because I'm very optimistic about this, that would mean we as meeting, all of our convention centers and hotels would then have to label for menu, top allergens on menu cards. And again, the nitty gritty of it is still going to be spelled out later on, but how do we do that, right? It just comes down to transparency and accuracy. And I want to know how we fill that loophole, how we close that loophole between the front of the house and the back of the house in labeling of our food. It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating for me as the meeting planner who's organizing the food, and for other meeting planners that I know have this challenge across the board. But it's got to be really, really challenging for our attendees. Again, we're ordering the food on their behalf, right? We don't necessarily know the ins and outs of everything, but we need to rely on, and we must rely on the people who are making the food. We trust you. We should be able to trust you to know what you're serving and to be accurate in your labeling. So I'm begging and pleading and prodding anyone in food service, whether you're a hotel, you're a convention center, you're a conference center, if you're serving food and beverage to people, please label it. I don't care. Let me show you an example. I don't care if it's hey, you've got the listing of it. Let's see if I have anything here in my cards here. I don't have anything here. Even if you have to do a checkbox like this, right? Put a card up here like this that says, this is the ingredient label and here's the allergens, right? Or talk to Galley, which is who I interviewed during Food Allergy Awareness Month. Their system actually helps you label the allergens on your food and beverage when you're putting it into the system, when you're upgrading it, right? And then you can help print it out. But make sure that it's on your menu cards. Make sure that it lists, hey, contains wheat, is vegan, vegetarian. Make sure that it's there, because your attendees can ask questions. And if they're asking questions, they're asking the people who don't have the answers. So make it into your standard operating procedures as a meeting professional. Understand who will be proofing your labels, who will be confirming the ingredients and all of that based on the dietary needs of your attendees, and the top 9 plus the dietary needs of your attendees. And then who's responsible for expediting those meals and who's responsible for proofing the labels. This can be life or death, right? I don't want you to be known for the event that somebody went to the hospital and died, right? I want you to be known to be the venue and the event that cares for the attendees who are coming there, who provide a safe experience and a wonderful environment for them to do that. So that's my rant today. I feel when I come on here, it's just me by myself and it's a rant, but I'm hoping I'm educating you at the same time, because my education options are coming from my own personal experience of having working with literally on a, annual basis with chefs across the country to make sure that food and beverage is ordered and it's safe. I did have, when I sent out the information to our attendees in advance, I had a gentleman come up to me at the event and he has a shellfish allergy. And he said, I cannot thank you enough for the information that you provided in advance to letting me know what I can and cannot eat. And that if I need, how is it going to be labeled, who to contact if they have any questions. I gave them my cell phone number, told them to reach out to me if they had any information, any issues or questions. I gave them meal cards that were personalized with their name on them. It pays to pay attention. It pays to care, and it pays to provide an inclusive experience. So I thank you for listening to me today. I hope that I provided some education on how to do this and what to do. Please feel free to put in the comments challenges that you've had, solutions that you've provided or found, whether you're a hotel, convention center, or a meeting planner. What are you doing to make sure that your attendees feel safe at your events? Thanks. Talk to you next week. Stay safe and eat well until then.
Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.